Jack Ward took out the Tour of Tasmania by a margin slimmer than himself, but was it a bike change that made all the difference? I'm Angus Calder here. Welcome back to the Homegrown Advantage, where we break down domestic racing here in Australia. Today, we're looking at Jack Ward's storming ride in the Tour of Tasmania, one of the premier tours on the domestic calendar. And it's the only level of this race, actually, that provides a proper summit finish. So you usually get a lot of the GC riders turning out in force for this one. Heading into it, all eyes were on Team Brennan's Jack Ward. I was a bit of a contrarian, to be honest. My pick was Zach Marriage from the Butterfield Zip Track team. And it came right down to the wire on the final stage. So it's interesting to look back on this one, see if there were a few sort of key moments, things like that, and a few decisions actually that nearly cost Jack Ward the overall title. So we'll go back and have a look at those pretty closely. Starting off with the Criterium stage in Devonport, we saw the Brennan squad going back to their SA Kick-It playbook, looking for bonus seconds at the intermediate sprints. They had full team commitment for this one again to get Jack Ward up for those intermediates, and he delivered again, which is very impressive for a rider of his size. But the only problem for them, there were no bonus seconds on offer in the intermediate sprints in the crit. So Jack Ward, Team Brennan, they spent a bunch of energy for no real gain at this point, other than to prove that Jack Ward really wanted to win the GC, but we already knew that going into this one. He also very nearly came unstuck when we saw a crash in the back half of the race, actually. And this is someone here just touching down right in front of Ward. He puts his mountain bike skills to good use, quickly hopping up the curb. So quite a small moment, but one that potentially saved his tour here. And, you know, at the end of this race, we end up with a bunch sprint. Again, everybody's looking at Team Brennan here, specifically Blake Agnoletto. But it's Kurt Ether, actually, who comes through first around this final corner, stomping on the pedals. And so he ends up taking the win ahead of Blake Agnoletto. And take a look here in third, the Australian Jonas Vingegaard, also known as Zach Marriage, who took third. And we know there are no bonus points for intermediates here, but there are bonus seconds, I should say, for the finish line places. And he took a handy 4 seconds over his main rival, Jack Ward, heading into stage 2. Stage 2, very tough stage. They had the Union Bridge climb, which was sat in the middle of the stage, 2.9 Ks at 9.8%, pitches up to 18%. Shouldn't be too much of an issue for Ward or Marriage, but still it will thin the field and create a different dynamic for the back half of the race. 3 riders made the break. And keep an eye on this fellow here, Brendan Green from the Cycling Development Foundation. He's been in the break every single race. Every race where a break's gone away, Brendan Green's been in it. This man is addicted to riding in the wind out the front. So he gets out in the break. They hit the Union Bridge climb, and it's actually Connor Wright, the young mountain biker. He's really stepping on it up here. The group gets completely shredded. Kurt Ether, he goes out the back, and we end up with a group of 6 here, just about to catch the only rider remaining from the break ahead. That's Ollie Jirovic from the ARA Skip Capital team. Jack Ward, he thinks for a second here and goes, the only thing to do, attack. So he hits out. And check out his pace here. The group behind, they're really leaning on it, trying to catch him. All the while, he's out there just fiddling with his head unit, sort of just riding away from them. So super strong performance from Jack on this stage. And we've got about 37 Ks to go or so. So quite a long way for him to go. That's going to be almost an hour's worth of racing. The group behind, they really left it to Zach Marriage to close him down. Zach Marriage, he had the most on the line here, I think. The others, they're all thinking of the stage win, and if they are thinking of riding for GC, they would want to try and conserve their energy at the expense of Zach Marriage. So he's up there, he's just getting to work. Zach Marriage ends up pretty much dropping the whole front group except for Hamish McKenzie, who's an absolute weapon. He's off to the World Tour next year with Jaco Wallula. He's the only one who can hang with Zach Marriage at this point. And Hamish McKenzie had a very clever finale. So he knew there was a rivalry between Zach Marriage and Jack Ward that he could capitalize on. So as soon as Marriage manages to close the gap to Ward, McKenzie instantly attacks. Marriage, Ward, they mark each other out of contention for the stage here, and McKenzie just solos away. And this meant a lot for Hamish McKenzie. He'd just lost one of his biggest supporters in his great-grandmother, and he had a really lovely salute pointing to the sky, dedicated his win to her, before letting out some of the emotion crossing the line. Ward and Marriage, they duel it out for the bonus seconds behind. Ward took second place and the 6 bonus seconds there. Marriage takes third and the 4 bonuses. He did come third in one of the intermediate sprints, Zach Marriage. So the gap between the two of them, that was sitting at 3 seconds after stage 2. And then heading into the final stage, still on Saturday, we had a double day here. They had a flat 4-kilometre time trial in the afternoon. Ollie Bledden, he's the Olympic gold medalist in the team's pursuit. He was the number 1 favourite, and boy, was he moving. I put it up on my Instagram story reporting that he averaged 47 Ks an hour on his road bike, no less. And he messaged me saying, it's not 47, it was actually 50 according to his ride file, which is just insane. Zach Marriage, we expected him to take a bit of time off Ward here. He's the under-23 time trial champ for Australia. And he actually took out a pretty good chunk in 4 kilometres. He took 17 seconds out of Ward here. So the gap between Marriage and Ward is now 20 seconds. heading into the final stage with the Golden Valley climb. Hamish Mackenzie, he held on to GC. I don't think we were really expecting him to be able to climb with Ward and Marriage up Golden Valley, but still he starts this stage in the leader's jersey. Really strong performance from him there. And now we come to stage 4. It's the showdown we've all been waiting for. Jack Ward, 20 seconds back. But with the time bonuses, if he wins the stage and Zach Marriage comes second, Ward needs to win by 17 seconds to get ahead of Marriage. 16 seconds and they're on exactly the same time. They both know this, and that's what we'll work off, 17 seconds. Ward, he turned up on the start line actually for this one with a new bike. We've seen him riding his Cervelo S5 for pretty much every race so far in the Pro Velo Super League, but he came here on a Cervelo Soloist. His team, Brennan, they're sponsored by Cervelo, and Graham Moffat, he's the big boss of Cervelo here in Australia. He's come through with the all-important hookup. And it's an interesting one. It's not a super steep climb. It's obviously not flat either. I wonder how much this bike swap saved Ward in the end. I think for most of the actual climbing sections on this final climb, it's about 6% or so. The climb overall averages just below 5% because there are a few flat sections in there. So what do you reckon? Did this make the difference for him on that final climb? But back to the stage. We had another break of 3, and again, it's your boy, Brendan Green, Cycling Development Foundation. He's in the breakaway looking to get some airtime. We see Ollie Bledden here as well, chatting to Hamish Mackenzie, saying, hey, bro, hope you're ready because we're going to be going absolutely ham up this final climb. Butterfields are riding the front for Zach Marriage here, which I find a little bit curious because, number one, Zach Marriage, he's going to need his teammates on this final climb. And number two, for Butterfields, they would actually want the breakaway to take those bonus seconds. I know the chance of them getting all the way to the finish at the front is low. But for Butterfields, if they can take away those bonus seconds, that means that Jack Ward needs a bigger margin to win the GC overall. So interesting to see them as the team chasing the breakdown here. They were actually up there for quite a while before Brennan came up alongside them, getting ready for the big showdown. Brendan Green, he got reeled in as the last survivor from the break, and Brennan were just lighting it up here for Jack Ward. Zach Marriage, interestingly, he was immediately isolated after his team used all of their effort on the flat. And look at his position here. He's in 7th wheel. If he was feeling really good, you'd expect him to be glued to Jack Ward's wheel, who's a little bit further up, because we know that Jack Ward is going to attack at some point. And assuming that Hamish Mackenzie is going to go backwards sometime soon, Zach's only job for today is to not let Jack Ward get 17 seconds on him. And it also means that he'll have to burn some energy when Mackenzie does go backwards because Marriage is going to have to ride around him and close that gap there. These are all small things in the moment, which probably seem trivial, but over the course of a tour, over the course of the 16-kilometre final stage, they all add up. In pretty quick succession after that, Hamish Mackenzie gets dropped and Ward goes on the attack. Marriage, he has to ride around to the front and starts chasing. He briefly gets a bit of assistance from Finn Walsh, but it's pretty short-lived. Ward is absolutely storming out the front there, and Marriage, at this point, he needs to just ignore everybody around him and just focus on closing that gap to Jack Ward. Jack Ward was sitting at about 15 seconds for most of the climb up here, and he looked like he still had a lot of spring in his legs as he was going up. And if you look at him here as it flattens out, he keeps pressure on the pedals, really building that momentum into the next section. Whereas Marriage, he's looking around left and right. He's sort of trying to encourage the other guys to work. At this point, he needs to just go head down, ignore them, and focus on Jack Ward. It's pretty touch and go here. When they get to the 3-kilometre mark, the gap is 16 seconds, so it's right on the cusp. If they finished at this exact moment, they would finish on exactly the same time in GC. And keep in mind, Marriage was actually flying up here. He basically rode everybody out of his wheel except for Ollie Sims. And this is on a climb where drafting actually has quite a big role. So Zach Marriage is really stepping on it this top half of the climb. Jack Ward, he manages to hold on for the stage win, and we were all waiting for the gap at this point. Fingerguard, just jokes, Zach Marriage, comes across the line, and it's super close. We had to wait for confirmation as well to see if Ward was going to take out the GC. And after confirmation came through, he took it by 1 second. He wins the stage by 17 seconds, takes the GC by 1 second, which is incredibly close. Here's what he had to say post-stage.
The team, just without them, it wouldn't have happened, and it's so good.
What does it mean for the overall Pro Velo Super League? It puts you right there for that road to the World Tour.
Yeah, for sure. It's a bunch of points, and it just gets me one step closer, so yeah.
Good stuff, mate. That's amazing performance.
Cheers.
So Jack Ward, he leads into the Harbour City GP. He's actually going to miss Grafton to Inverell, which is the 5th of the 6 rounds in the Pro Velo Super League. And I'm curious to hear what you think. Will Zach Marriage be able to close the gap in those next few rounds? He's going to be at Grafton. Keep in mind, he missed the SA Kick It, so he didn't get a few points there. And this is going to be his chance to really try and close that gap on Jack Ward. So let me know what you think. Do you reckon he can do it? That's all for now. We'll catch you in the next one.